Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. It's bank holiday edition once again. Daniel Routledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all of the action. I think Ben Thomas might have just about finished. Oh, he's got his hat on to prove it's bank holiday.
I've crowned
Oh,
myself.
you crowned yourself. Nice.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice.
Yeah, I haven't got a golden orb
Or a massive sword.
or two massive swords. What was it? Sword of sacrifice? I don't know. I didn't
To be
watch
honest
enough.
with you, I was in wheelchair basketball, so I didn't see any of it.
Yeah. Credit to you, and credit to you. You should get the MB for that. But anyway, yeah, no, that's gone now.
There we go. And let's start off actually, because I think the Cheshire game is literally just finished.
Yeah.
Let's start off with the 1-5 matchup. Cheshire and London. London Lions 82-74 victors in the first leg yesterday, and 102-81 victors at Ellesmere Port today for a 184-155 aggregate win. No Sam Decker for London. I was watching this game at Morningside before the Leicester game, so I couldn't hear because they had the PA on, but somebody told me they said on comms he was out for the season. I know the season's only one more week, but he was. I don't know if you heard that.
I didn't get all the commentary either. But they've not formally announced it.
No.
Yeah, I mean, if it is, it's a bit of a blow for them. It shows kind of the line that you always have to take. That kind of line, it's a very fine line in relation to playing when you're hurt and aggravating things when you're hurt, because obviously he played in those minutes in Europe when he wasn't right, and then they came back and he played some minutes against Newcastle. And perhaps he'd have been better off sitting him down if that's the situation, or maybe he re-aggravated it or redone something, who knows. But yeah, it levels the playing field a little bit.
Tiny bit. Let's go into the game then. Archibald continuing his good form. Cheshire out to a 15-24 lead. I think the whole of British basketball was raising its eyebrows at that point when Cheshire up 9 early on.
Yeah, but it kind of took me again. I'm going to reminisce quite a lot on this kind of episode, so apologies to those who really don't give a toss. But all the playoff games that I was kind of involved in, this was always the hardest game. The first leg of the semi-final was always the hardest game, because you generally wound up for the first round because you're ready. You've been waiting for it for weeks. And then I always remember, and you were actually there, there was our 2011-2012 clean sweep season. The first leg of the semi-final was at Sports Central against Cheshire. And Cheshire went out 27 on us in the first half.
Yeah.
Bill Cole and I can't remember some of the other guys, Adam Brown, some other guys. They were up like 48-20 or something like that. They absolutely destroyed us because we weren't ready to play. We kind of down in that hollow again, and possibly a little bit not overconfident but comfortable, And I think we managed to scrape it back to 10 and then scrape past them in an absolutely brutally ugly game at Northgate. But it was that thing whereby the underdogs, they got nothing to lose at all. And so they come out flying at you, they drain some shots, and suddenly it spirals. And like, what's going on here? And I thought that was a little bit of that. I didn't think London would particularly. There's a couple of things with London. One, the coach kind of experimented with the starting lineup a bit. Because they went small and they matched up with Cheshire. So they had Philip, who hasn't played much, and he's been kind of thrust straight into the starting lineup, which is kind of a sink or swim thing. And they've got a lot of kind of secondary options, so it's not exactly a problem for them if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
But still, he's literally back off a whole season out, and he's been asked to kind of get up to speed. And then they obviously went with Taylor and also Best. And kind of Oni at the 4 and Zubcic at the 5, which is about as small as they can be, really. And that was to a certain degree to match up with the Cheshire team, who was starting Jamal Anderson at the 5.
Yeah.
And I thought that to play that small, they really had to play with a bit more energy and intensity than they did, particularly defensively. And they let the Phoenix guys get to the rim, and the Phoenix guys were playing with that. Who cares? No one expects us to win. Probably been listening to what was said last week, and so they just came out and played hard. And I don't think London were necessarily ready for it. And I I didn't really like the decision to start small, albeit I get without Decker, they haven't got that many options. Because the one thing that's kind of been London's calling card over the season has been that they've had an athletic advantage at most positions. You know, and by matching up with Cheshire, the three guards, they kind of, I thought they kind of reduced the advantage, you know. But you know, but then they get to come in, and Sharma gets to come in, and some of the more physical guards get to come in, like Solowade and Nelson. And that physical advantage, I thought, just gradually imposed itself on the game. But it's difficult when you start slow.
Yeah. Well, Solowadi came in, hit a couple of threes. They had a 14-3 run. That put London ahead. And there was kind of the story of the game. Every time London got ahead, you were thinking, oh, they're going to go here. They're going to go here. But Cheshire came back, and Cheshire was still in front at halftime, up 39-43.
And I don't think they really sufficiently respected. And it's a first leg, so you got to take this with a pinch of salt because you're playing them tomorrow as well. And by definition, the first leg is a little bit of a feeling out process, and London have an enormous amount of margin for error in relation to doing that feeling out. But I don't think they really got, you know, they respected the scouting report enough in this game. I don't think they got into Archibald. They certainly did a hell of a better job in doing it today. And Archibald made some plays. They were going over screens on Larry Austin, and Larry was getting downhill to the rim. And offensively, as I say, they were throwing different lineups out there, and they were just a little bit out of sync, just a little bit at times. But as I say, it's that first leg thing. First leg, the semi-final was always a really tough kind of game to get yourself up for, because you're all thinking about the second leg already. But I thought, Cheshire just came in and basically said, we're not scared of you. We're going to stick it to you. And, you know, they basically did that for as long as they kept making shots and kept being physically competitive.
Second half, Filippone, Zubcic threes. London were in front at the start of the third quarter, but again, Evans and Austin just had the Knicks back in front again. London then got to 6 at the end of the third quarter, and I thought the key spell of the game, and ultimately the tie, because the only way Cheshire had any chance was to come back with no more than a basket, but preferably with the lead, was right at the start of the fourth quarter, where Evans misses a layup, Ward Hibbert comes the other way, hits a three, then they turn the ball over and Huban gets a layup, and suddenly with 9 minutes to go, it's 72-61. You think, oh, all that effort, and they've, it's a double figure lead.
Down 11, and that's what they do to you with their kind of waves of depth. Ultimately, it's tough to keep having the same guys keep making the same shots. And you have to give a shout out to Ward Hibbert, who continues to impress every time you see him on the court. Even if he's playing 8 minutes or if he's playing 18 minutes, he's being productive and adding value. Nelson may be the best backup guard in the history of the league. I'm just saying that to myself now. I haven't thought about it before now, but I'm struggling to think of anybody, who's been notably better coming off the bench than him. And obviously you have, a Herban, a Euro Cup legend who's just gets to sit in the corner and knock down threes. But
Champions League rather than Euro Cup.
Champions League, sorry, my fault. So they're good. But the best thing I think about London this year, and we'll get to a bit in the second leg, is that their role players have got better as the years gone.
Yeah.
And that's not easy, because those guys aren't playing that much. They're not the main guys, right? So, it's a hell of a coaching job to get Solowade shooting the ball the way he is. He's shooting it.
It's virtually guaranteed knockdown now. And at the beginning of the season, you were thinking that's what you wanted him. That's what you wanted them to do.
And then Ward Hibbert as well, who's kind of really, really stepped into it. And even the guys who are just playing 15, 16 minutes have stayed connected. Even someone like Herban doesn't play every week. Best, who basically is better. They're all better than they were, I think, at the beginning of the season. And it's not easy to do when you play 50 odd games. Now it helps because you get into a rhythm because you're playing all those games as a team. But it's still, you've got to get yourself ready for those games mentally. And someone like Sulawadi, who doesn't necessarily, early season, maybe he's not getting in the game in Europe, he's not playing. And now he's, a major cog in what they're doing because he's able to kind of exert a defensive pressure. So I think that's probably been the most, it's not winning with that talent. That really, winning with that talent is expected. It's not easy, got to do it, but it's expected. It's not overwhelmingly praiseworthy. But to get those other guys jumping in and helping you win, when you've had, they may have been your 11th or 12th player at one point during the season, to have them coming and being ready to play at this part of the year. I mean, it talks about their professionalism, but also talks about the kind of the coaching staff preparation as well. And unfortunately, Cheshire had 7, and they're an American down losing Teague as well, which is tough. And they got basically 5 guys, and then they got Jack and David, the lawyer and the prison officer. So really overachieving to a remarkable degree. For that group, and picking up, in picking up mid-season, Maceo, Jack, and that was early season, and the Maury Archibald, done a great job on their recruitment.
They have.
Because they're not easy. They're not easy guys not easy mid-season to pick up the right people.
No, and even Evans didn't start the year, did he? He came from Finland or somewhere.
So you give them a ton of credit as well. But in this game, ultimately, as you say, once it got to kind of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you kind of figured out that they'd had that punch at them.
So they got it to 75-70 with a couple of minutes to go. Then nobody scored for about 4 minutes, and then they just traded scores the last 2 minutes. But unfortunately, London got 3 scores and Cheshire got 2 scores, and therefore it was an 8-point game instead of a 3-point game if it had been the other way round. And that was that for that game. Zubcic 15, Ward Hibbert 13, Solowadi 10, Archibald 9 of 23 for 24 points, Austin slightly more efficient 7 of 12 for 22 and 7, and Evans 13. And then in today's game, it's 9-8 after 4 minutes, and Nelson Am 1 and Nelson 3, a 10-0 run. It's 18-9, timeout called, and virtually the ball game at that point.
Firstly, I didn't know those stats, hadn't looked at the stats, but obviously you would have a pretty large money, I think, on Solowadi and Ward Hibbert being the second and third leading scorers in the first leg of the semi-final. So that kind of talks a little bit about what they are. Again, they started off with that kind of small lineup, and at one point there they seem to be trying to speed Cheshire up with the presses and the traps, and I was thinking to myself, it's high risk. I'm not really sure if I want to speed them up, but it's high risk in relation to giving up baskets early on, but it's pretty low risk when you think about how much you're wearing them down. And how short their bench is. And obviously they put neighbour in a little bit, but basically they still had 7 healthy players. So Cheshire got a little bit in transition, and as I say, it's going to be really fascinating to see what starts for London next week, because I'd be amazed. Well, not be amazed, but I'd be very surprised if it was Philip Taylor, Best, Oni, and Zubcic against Leicester. I have to think that was horses for courses in relation to who they were facing. But without Decker being there, if Decker's not there, then you do kind of have to make a decision. Do we play 3 guards? Or maybe do we bring in Ward Hibbert, or do we bring in Herban? And do we start Sharma? Because Sharma's been a weapon off the bench, but in a final, do you want Zubcic guarding Nelson Henry in the first 5 minutes? That's an interesting one, because Nelson Henry's going to take him down low and try and get him into foul trouble. So that will be an interesting thing to see. How they start. For me, their best advantage is their physicality amongst all the other advantages, amongst the size, the quickness, their finishing, and their depth. The best advantage is the physicality of the lineups that they can put out there, which are generally anchored by Sharma. and started by Nelson and Taylor, because they're the two most physical guards. So we'll see. But in this game, yeah, I mean, they basically shut them down defensively. They defended with a lot more discipline, I thought. And it was the
You
second
mentioned
unit,
Neighbour coming back
particularly
in.
Nelson.
You mentioned Neighbour coming back in. It was
Yeah.
1932 at that point. That to me felt like Ben's last roll of the dice. This isn't working. Let's see if Will Neighbour can go mad for 6 threes.
We got to do something.
Whatever.
It was like,
something.
the first quarter, I think. Yeah, I think Sharma blocked 2 shots just out of nowhere in the first the first quarter. The defender stood him up, and he's just behind. He's not even jumping. He's just behind there, just blocking stuff. And then in Solowade knocked down a couple of threes, and at that point, the whole thing is kind of drifting away. But it's drifting away because of London's defense, and the physicality that they had with that bigger unit on the court, which doesn't give up many offensive rebounds, and which basically was, I think, being far more respectful of the Cheshire guys' ability to make shots. And we've seen that switch at times this year, and that's what he meant to do in the second leg. So yeah, that Neighbour came in, he made a 3, he missed a couple more. But you're right, that was kind of the last hurrah, as it were. I think did Evans get injured? Because I didn't see much of him in the second half.
No, I don't know if he was injured, but he didn't play the second half.
Didn't play, so
he went out. When he went out, he looked a little frustrated about something. So I don't know whether it was injury or
tough.
just.
I mean, you build yourself up for it, and then they come out and
the start of the game for me on this one was at half time. The Knicks had 32 points, and the Lions bench had 37.
Yeah, well, that's a stat. I do like the way you come up with stats to kind of support the various bits of guff that I trot out.
I tweeted it earlier, so I didn't know what guff
I didn't
you were
see that.
out.
Because too busy watching Everton score 5 goals, my head was transfixed. So no, but that's really really informative, because that it felt like that. Now, finals different, because finals benches generally don't win finals as much as main guys do, and London maybe will know that be the opposite of normal, but in relation to cutting down our rotation, but finals generally come down to who's going to grab it, and the question with coach is whether or not he sticks with that, if it means getting off to a slightly slower start because Phillips not played much and they haven't got a true centre, or whether he goes nuclear and decides, no, we're going to go aggressive and physical from the get-go, and we're going to match up with them and utilize our advantages. But they don't have deck and they don't have the cheat code, so that means that there's a little bit more margin for error in the decisions that he has to make. And the one thing about having a bench like that is you've got decisions to make.
Yeah.
You have a ton of decisions to make, and you have to be very clear. And I say you have to be. I don't think we ever had such a bench, so I don't think we ever had to be very clear at all. But Ryan Schmidt was going to have to be very clear in his own mind going into the final as to this is the way that we intend to shut down, as to these the guys that we intend to rely on, and have an idea in his head who's going to be the ones who are who are going to be playing the 25, 27 minutes, because you don't want to have to find it out during the game. You want to say, look, and you want to have the roles in your own mind defined, even if the players don't know them. So that's slightly intriguing, but second half was just Cheshire
unnecessarily long. Yeah, I mean Cheshire kept going, but it was unnecessarily long. It was unnecessarally sort of like chippy as well. I couldn't quite work out.
That's the second time in a row, So there's Newcastle last week and Cheshire this week, and maybe it's just London, maybe there's a little bit of stuff going on there whereby teams are just basically saying, look, at the end of the day, you might beat us, but you're going to get your lumps, and we're going to keep going, and and Jack Hudson and David Ulf showed that they're on Liverpool basketball link-ups, and that was knocking down.
I did make that remark on. I think I was talking to Rowe on Friday. It's sort of mad that you basically had Liverpool basketball going up against the Eurocup team. One stage in that first leg. It was.
Well, I'll tell you something. He knows how to get David Ulf the ball.
Yeah, he does.
3 or 4 times. With whoever the beat is, he knows that there is there's an understanding there, and one thing about David Ulf is he's actually a really good finisher with both hands. He's not. He wouldn't describe himself as being the most athletic finisher, but a couple of times he's able to transfer the ball from left hand to right hand, which is a skill. So they stuck at it, and to be honest, it's a bit of victory that they got Ryan Schmidt to call two slightly timeouts.
Yeah. I mean, the second one in the third quarter, you could see how livid he was.
Yeah, I think
He
Jack
was
just
like,
ran
he
back
just
down
went,
and dunked on them, didn't he?
you in like that, pulled
Yeah.
his starters back in, and was
which is important. I mean, you've got to try to. It's a really fine line you've got to ride in relation to this game is over and we don't want to get hurt, but we want to keep doing the same things. And keep doing the right things.
But again, he needs to think of the podcasters who were waiting for this game to end. He didn't give enough.
I can be pretty sure that of all the things that crossed his mind,
that we were not one of them.
Timetabling was not one of them. In fact, he may have unnecessarily extended it specifically for that purpose.
Jack with 6 of 11 threes, 34 points and 6 rebounds. Archibald 14 points. They were the only two players in double figures. Sharma 16, Best 16, Taylor 14, Ward Hibbert 14. They had 6 guys in double figures, were 55% from the floor and 40% from 3.
Yeah, it's really interesting because that with Deck has not been an overwhelmingly kind of takeover force in all season. He hasn't had to be. But with him out, they do become even more even spread in relation to the way that they play. And it's that advantage, which is you don't know who it's going to be. It's whoever's open in the corner is going to shoot the ball, which makes it difficult for a team to lock in on certain players. That's one thing, but it's that disadvantage, which is if the opposition don't know who the guy is. Well, who do you know who the guy is? Who's going to be making players near the end? My guess is it's going to be Jordan Taylor, who I think is probably going to be the one who kind of comes as close as is necessary to assuming the Deck and mantle, albeit in a very different way because of the position that he plays. But I don't think they're going to blow Leicester away like they've blown Newcastle and Cheshire away. I think I think they've got a lot of respect for Leicester. I think Leicester have that advantage. Not the advantage, but they're as their wings are as competitive with London as any wings in the league, and that wings includes big guards. So that's Whelan, Loving, Jackson, even Walsh. No, sorry, Evan Walsh, even Walsh. And of course Adekoya, who isn't really a wing but can kind of switch on to anyone. So if they make threes in the final, then it's done. It's done. No one can beat that team if they're making threes. But if they miss it, if the first unit comes in and misses a few, and then the second unit comes in and doesn't get into a rhythm, then by the time the first unit comes in, the pressure comes back in, the pressure can be on, and things can spiral. And we've seen it before. So yeah, I mean, it's ultimately, two comfortable wins where no one's given them anything, but they went out there and taken it the way that they were meant to.
Let's go to the other one then. The 2-3 matchup. Bristol Flyers 77, Leicester Riders 84, and Leicester Riders 75, Bristol Flyers 79, which is a 159-156 aggregate win for Leicester. King.
Ooh, close game.
Close game. Yeah. King coming off the bench in the first leg. Riders defensively pretty good early on, edged out to a 15-8 lead. No offensive rebounds despite some poor shooting from Bristol in the early stages.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. It's the same thing as I said about the other game. It's that third game, the home game. If that is your home game and you're kind of knowing you're expecting to get into a game, but there's a second leg, Bristol weren't ready for it. They all season they've been the best first quarter team in the league. Probably. I mean, London, obviously, you take London out of everything, but even then, you would put Bristol right up in that conversation. I also felt for Andreas because the whole VJ King thing is really tough, because he he's going to be. I imagine he's going to be in the team of the year. Probably a top 5 player in the league this year. He may be more than that.
I voted him second in my
Well, there you go.
in my
Okay, so
ballot.
second. I don't get a vote because I spend too much time shouting on here.
For the journalists, Basketball Journalists
Okay, well, I'm
Association,
not
not
doing
for,
that's fair
obviously
enough.
they don't get a vote
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
proper
yeah. I
one.
would never claim to be a journalist, and they have
Yeah.
they have ethics and scrutiny, and have to stand up to scrutiny. Um. So yeah, okay, second. Okay, well, that's certainly a perfectly fair position to take. Um. So, but he hasn't been playing, or he hasn't been healthy. He kind of played a little bit coming off the bench last week at Manchester against Manchester, and was really great.
Yeah.
It impacted them positively. And so you're the coach, and you're left with this kind of dilemma. And I've been there, and I've argued actually with Lanoy about it multiple times about different things about different players in different seasons. Do you put your all league player back in the starting lineup where he's been all season and where frankly, on any rational basis he belongs? Or do you worry that then stuffs up what's working for you?
Yeah.
And keep it going.
And some of that is also about what sort of player he is and how that impacts on him. Because it's like Sullivan, for example, in his later years at Leicester, played as off the bench, played 6-man off the bench, but he was always on the court at the end of the game. We get wrapped up in who starts. He was always on the court at the end of the game, and
we had
he was.
Charles doing the
Yeah,
same.
you had Charles Smith as well, and they were both comfortable doing that, and boy, it made your bench unit a lot better. And boy, that could be the point where you win games, is when you've got Charles Smith or Drew Sullivan going up against bench units.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not every player is comfortable doing that.
And also, there's a different level of security depending upon where you are in your career.
Yeah. They were both near the end.
I'm pretty sure that neither Charles nor Drew would have been overly keen coming off the bench in 2006 or 2008.
No, probably not.
Because it's just you're making your way, and
not quite the same. But even Kimball McKenzie this year, we've seen
McKenzie's been in and out and in and out. You have to be very confident in your own persona, confident in what you are, confident in what the purpose is, and to be blunt, coaches' dreams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You sit next to two of them in Leicester and Rowe.
Yeah.
Rowe, when he didn't get off the bench in the 2016 final, still hasn't complained about it, apart from obviously live on telly. But you do. It's so important I have that. But my argument was always, in that situation, you put your talent on the court. Fab was actually the opposite. Fab was like, no, these guys got us here. I ain't doing that to him. He deserves to play, so he's playing. He's going back. And so I get the players, and that was more kind of a players thing. I was always like, get your talent on the court. If it's the biggest game of your season, and he's the second best player in the league or third best player in the league, get him on the court. But it's a horrible line, and that's why I feel really sympathetic, because there's never a right answer, and then there's only people like me talking about it being the wrong answer when they get out on 25 early, because it's hindsight, pure hindsight. So that was a big thing. Secondly, I thought Leicester were a little bit readier, a little bit more prepared, a little.
So Drew was talking on Twitter, and I spoke to him yesterday about it as well, about them being a little young, basically. Weren't quite there because of the magnitude of the game and the fact that they're not all, but a lot of them at the front end of their career.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think I would say that as well. And ultimately, you win with vets. You win the biggest game with vets. There's a reason that in both these games, Leicester cut the rotation right down. They basically, Bowman didn't get off the bench. In the second leg, Samuels didn't get off the bench for Bristol. Both those guys are perfectly solid BBL players and they can play, but they're both also very young.
And the other thing is the leash is quite short as well. So in this first leg, Leicester went from 11-15 in front with 2 minutes to go in the first quarter to 11-34 in front, so 19 unanswered points in 6 minutes. And that was largely driven by Menzies. And Menzies playing as well as he did
Yeah.
That meant when Nelson Henry got one foul in the first quarter of the second leg,
He could win the
and
game.
I think he missed a shot. He was pulled 2 minutes in, and that just never happens.
No, and to be fair, so far I've got, saying Cheshire had no chance last week.
Mm.
And then obviously they come out and they're up by 10 after the first
Yeah,
quarter.
yeah.
And then saying that I wasn't sure
You
Menzies was
didn't
going to be in
think
the game. I thought Adequate who we playing, and then Menzies. So I think there's some bulletin board material being created yet. As Aaron Menzies came in and he was great.
Yeah, he was great.
He gave you the very best version of Aaron Menzies because he was around the basket, he was finishing at the rim, he was pumped up, you could see it, and that's a massive boost for a coach because it's okay. This is another option that I've got, and you're right because he absolutely he impacted the game in a number of ways. And when, unfortunately, Bristol kind of went a little bit early to the old 15-point shot.
Yeah.
They shot the ball a bit earlier in the offense and they didn't quite get any rebounding or have any offensive rebounding positions. Got a little bit antsy in relation to the fact that the game was building up and every bad shot you take is an opportunity at the other end. I'm going to take you back down memory lane again as well, because I'm sorry for those guys who don't care, but I was getting deja vu because the year before Bristol beat us in their most celebrated ever victory.
Well, I think the Manchester one's overtaken it now.
Is it really? I'm
Yeah,
disappointed.
I think so.
But the year before that, we also played down there on a wonderfully BBL scheduled playoff quarterfinals where we played at Bristol on the Thursday night and Sports Centre on the Friday night. That was the famous Hamid Ali season.
Oh yeah.
You don't remember Hamid Ali, who one of the most
Yeah.
talented guard out of Texas.
It'll be on YouTube somewhere. There'll be the London game where he just went absolutely mad in the third quarter.
And he was Tremor reincarnate. He was out of Texas. He could. I know he wasn't probably the easiest player for Andreas to control, but he had an enormous amount of talent. And we went down there for the first leg, and they were obviously quite young, very young, even young to the league at that point on the Thursday night. And we were up 25 by half time, or by 2 possessions before half time. It was like something like 45-20 or something like that. It's very similar to this game. And the second half of that game was the longest second half I ever watched, because we just could not. We just want to get out of the gym.
Yeah.
Just want to get out, and you're conscious that all you've done is they've now got 6 quarters to build up momentum and headway in relation to coming back. Whereas everybody who doesn't know this is going to be saying, you're up by 25 after a quarter and a half.
Yeah.
You can't possibly lose from there.
You can't lose from there. Yeah.
And the players, and obviously players have this in the back of their mind as well. They say, well, it's not as easy anymore. And then that place gets loud, and then they get a bit of momentum. And then, and they're flying around on defense. And obviously they had Dozy in those days jumping around and, and all sorts of stuff. And I think in the end, we won that game by 2 or 3. We're delighted to get out of the gym. And then, we nearly got beat in the second leg, actually, and until actually Fab started darting Hamid Ali with about 2 minutes to go, and we managed to slow him down for 2 minutes and won by about 3 points on aggregate. But I felt like that was just the same thing happening. Bristol needed a little bit of momentum in this game, but in that gym, when they start playing with nothing to lose and they get a little bit of rhythm, and Leicester start getting a little bit more comfortable because things are going so well, then it can change like that.
Yeah. So the first 14 minutes of the game, Bristol were 4 of 25 shooting. They had no players with an offensive rebound. They had 3 team offensive rebounds. One was a foul, one Walsh stepped out of bounds. I think the third one bounced out off a hand. It was until 4 minutes to go to half time that the first Bristol player got an offensive rebound. I give all those stats because obviously they lead the league in rebounding, and this is the big thing that we always talk about with them, with offensive rebounding. And they did end up with 20, so it shows you how quickly they got 20. That the first player offensive rebound was 2 minutes to go to half time. But they did get the last 12 points of the first half, so they cut it to 13 at halftime, 28-41.
Yeah, and as I say, that was absolute deja vu because I remember playing that game and being exactly the same until about 2 minutes before half time, and just seeing all the bad things that were going to happen in front of your eyes. Yeah, and
because the other stats I've got on that first half is they actually had 8 more shots than Leicester in the first half and
yeah,
13 less
and
points.
Leicester, and it's so comfortable when you're getting all the shots you want and you're knocking them down, and you're playing controlled basketball and you're shutting the team down. And the other thing Leicester aren't doing is they're not bailing them out from the foul line because they don't commit dumb fouls. So Bristol aren't knocking down shots, and I think we said probably 2 weeks ago that there's a risk that they might have a drought, which might kill them. And this drought did eventually kill them because basically they won the last 6 quarters of this, or the last 6.5 quarters of this tie comfortably. But the first 18 minutes killed them. And that's why you've got to be ready from the get-go.
Yeah. So Leicester stayed in front by double figures for most of the second half. And I actually thought watching it, 10 points felt about a fair return for...
But every time Bristol came close, they kind of missed a shot, or they had a transition 3 opportunity which they couldn't knock down, and they never quite got to that point whereby you thought the roof was going to come off, whereby they make that shot and the crowd's up and it's like a 5-point game or a 4-point game. Because the crowd's looking at winning the game, not the aggregate, so you want to get the crowd, and they never quite got to that point.
No, but King did help them get to 7. And before we go on to the next leg, just talk about that call at the end, because the weird thing about it was I looked at it and thought Bristol don't want that foul because they've just sent a 90% free throw shooter to the line. Leicester don't want that foul because there's 9 seconds left and they want to take the last shot of the game, and it's not really much of a muchness. It didn't really do anything to warrant.
Make a difference.
It didn't make a difference. But I actually thought it favoured Bristol, and I only say this because on Twitter people are going mad about the call. And actually, I thought it helped Bristol in the fact that Leicester were going to take the last shot and probably would have won by 9, and instead they won by 7 because there was 9 seconds left.
Yeah, maybe. But I think a lot of things have to go right for Bristol. But bottom line is you don't want the refs to kind of decide the game. And if I'm Bristol, I'm just playing defense and getting out of there and saying we're going to stop you. We're going to score. We're going to stop you. And if you happily foul us on the offensive rebound, even better, we'll go on the other end. So I don't think Leicester would have been too disappointed with 2 free points at that point in the game.
I was reliably informed yesterday that the message in the timeout was take the last shot.
That's fine. But take that shot. That's fine. Absolutely.
So 2 free throws with 9 seconds to go, I don't think would have been.
Well, 2 free throws for Aaron Menzies with 9 seconds to go. 2 free throws for Kimmel McKenzie. That's guaranteed 2 points effectively. So part of that. No, I mean basically what happened in the briefest terms was that the possession before, I was my teeth were like going, Jelani Watson Gale, you're going to foul him. You're going to foul him. He was playing very physical on Kimmel McKenzie, bringing the ball down the court. There's a couple of little bumps and that type of thing. Refs didn't call anything. My anticipation is that it's probably because Keith was down on the baseline, and so the bumps that were going on, and thought, well, we're not having any more of this. And I think he overreacted and called it unnecessarily with 9 seconds to go, as per Drew's tweet, which was, "Oh, Keith." But overall, I thought it was a very well ref game. I had no problems with the ref in the game at all, and. That's a problem with a ref. You get one slightly dubious call near the end, you get to be a meme. Albeit, to be fair, I said slightly dubious, pretty horrendous, I thought. But even so, at the end of the day, bell goes down, makes a layup, get on with it, play on. Game.
So King 23, Miller 13, Bell 12, Delpesh 10 and 12 rebounds. Mackenzie 14, Jackson 11, Whelan, Nelson Henry, Menzies, and Walsh 10. Only 17 times since 2008 in a playoff game of 6 players scored 10 for the same team, which is just a random thing that I looked up.
Thanks for that.
Random reasons. So let's go to the second leg, and I must confess, 10 minutes before the game, I said to Rowe, I think Bristol are going to win this. And yet Sammy had asked me an hour before the game. I said, "Oh, Leicester will win." So I just was flip-flopping, and I'm just going to share that.
It's that 7 points is
7 points. There's a reason that most teams don't come back from 7, and there's a reason that most teams don't come back from 7 when they've lost away from lost at home, you know,
Yeah,
because it's not easy. And the other thing is Leicester have lost by more than 7 once this season and
yeah,
once last season in the Morningside Arena.
yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, it's
it's
tough.
not, it's tough, but you've got a small chance.
Well, you have a
Um,
window. Yeah, you
yeah,
absolutely have a window. Yeah, and it's all about trying to create anxiety in the opposition.
mm,
That this could happen.
yeah, which they did.
And they did, but not enough to crack them.
No,
No, and that's partly due to Leicester's veteran experience, which comes back to stuff that we talked about before, and partly due to the fact that Bristol had a couple of possessions where they could have come very close to cracking them.
yeah.
There was an offensive foul. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but
Yeah.
there was an offensive
Let's
foul
quickly run through the early
like that.
stages. So Love and Loving scoring at one end, Miller Delpesh at the other. Nothing really in the first quarter. Ollison then a couple of threes had Flyers up 25-30. That was the first time they got close to aggregate lead. But then Jackson had 5 in a 9-0 run, and Leicester were back ahead in the game 34-30. I'm then just going to do anything you want to do on the first half before I do
Well,
the.
just to say that, Ollison's obviously shooting the ball well, and to
Yeah,
win that game, Bristol had to shoot the ball well.
yeah,
Question about that, and they did to a pretty good degree, and Smith in this case, because this is the way players react. So Menzies dominates the first game, so the second game Smith goes at him.
mm,
So coach is clearly called Smith. You're quicker than him. You attack him, and you got a couple of and ones on him, finished around him. So that changes. That's one player reacting to how another player played the game before. And by getting up by 5, basically Bristol tell Leicester, hey, we're here.
mm.
So they kind of pushed Leicester into a run. And that's important because if they'd never done that, if they're down 5 the whole first half, Leicester just playing basketball. But by getting up, they then provoke. They throw the first punch, then they provoke Leicester into responding to that, and it then becomes a game of counter punching. And basically, can Bristol throw enough to the point whereby Leicester are staggering and effectively start to beat themselves out of panic, a little bit like Bristol in the first quarter last week. So it was important that they got up, but it was never going to be determinative as to what happened. It was always going to come down to the second half and who kept their nerve.
So Ollison hits threes either side of halftime. Delpesh then ties the game on aggregate for the first time at 40-47, a minute into the third quarter. And then they had their first aggregate lead off the back of a 7-0 run to 56-46, so up 3 with 14 minutes to go. And as you say, punch, counter punch. Mackenzie 3, Whelan got fouled on a 3-point shot, made all 3. Leicester back ahead in the game, back ahead on aggregate, down in the game 54.
But this is the thing, 58. You see, that Bristol have got to the point which you have to get to, whereby Leicester at that point are playing the aggregate score.
Yeah, they were, yeah.
And it's a mental thing. They're knowing that we're up 7, we got to get back in this. So they're down 4, but in their minds they're up 3. So you've kind of just moved the field a little bit. You've just changed the line of the goalposts, because every coach will say we just want to win the game. Until it's a fourth quarter. No, we just want to get the hell out of here next round.
Yeah.
The other thing about this didn't mention was King started this game.
Yes. Sorry, I thought.
So and that's the twist. You see, that's it. You're damned if you do. Came off the bench. The team was pretty awful when he was in the first quarter. Didn't roll. He ended up with 23 points.
Yeah.
Andreas thinks, well, we need to start, and we can't do that. We can't go through that kind of first quarter again. And he probably has his least effective game. And you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. There's no right answer. So Bristol got to 10. As you say, it came back down to 4, but then they made another run, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. So then Delpesh really leading them. 9 minutes to go. They're up 12, so 5 on aggregate, 54-66. And that is the point at which where you're thinking Leicester couldn't make a shot at the start of the fourth quarter. And so they had their moments to even push it, because 5 is still, we're only 2 shots behind. But if it's suddenly 7 or 8, it's a massive hole.
If it's 9, then you get to cracking point, because suddenly it's a 16-point basketball game. You're thinking, Jesus, the stuff that we're doing isn't working. We're actually down 16 in real life. All it can then take is a couple of empty possessions, a couple of bad decisions, or a couple of panic decisions. They're experienced team, but they've also got some new pieces, Leicester. In relation to, particularly in relation to the love the point guard. and a couple of other guys as well who haven't played that much in that environment. And I thought there was a call where Del Pesh got called for the moving screen on half court, in the half court when they're up 12. Which you commented his stance was too wide, and it was, and I think it probably was. It was a borderline call, but it was, you gave him the opportunity to make the call. And that, as you say, that possession, and I think there was another possession down the next time down where they jacked up a three, and they didn't hammer the nail in. The nail is there. To be hammered. But it's like it's. I'm using bad metaphors here. It's probably not even. It's like the twisting of a vice. You're constantly trying to twist the pressure up, and to do that, you have to keep scoring. And if you get to that point whereby, as you say, you're up 16, there's 6 minutes to go, you're up 9 in aggregate, the whole gym is thinking, "My goodness, they're going to do this." Then you're really testing the mettle of the opposition players as to whether or not they have the mental acuity to stay. Now, Leicester have more of it than probably anybody else in the league because of both their experience and their shot making capabilities. And it was their shot making capabilities which ultimately just got them out of this.
So Mackenzie made a corner 3 that had Leicester back ahead on aggregate,
but third one in like 3 minutes. He missed 2, but he missed 2 in a row. But Bristol hadn't scored at the other end.
And
then they gave up the corner one. I think that might have even been a transition 3.
It was.
Off an offensive rebound. Where they crashed for offensive rebound. And I remember thinking to myself, that's the type of mistake you can't make when you're up. You're a great offensive rebounding team, but you can't just throw up a shot and then be 3-on-2 the other way just in the playoffs in the fourth quarter. You've got to be a bit of a matchup in transition, because otherwise you give away stuff like that. There was a big shot in the corner, but it was an open shot, and he'd make that most times.
Although again, game context, it's even open is a.
It is, but once it's these guys, if you're a shooter, Mackenzie qualifies, you're not missing 3 in a row. You're not missing 3 in a row. If you you're not going to be in the game to miss a fourth if that happens. But if you're a shooter, and he is a good shooter, then I knew that one was going down. Because it's almost like every one you miss makes you focus just a teensy bit more on the next one.
Well, one you might not have known was going down mid fourth quarter was Bell banking it in for 3.
Banking in a 3. And at that point you think,
that was the one. It might be their day. So 61-72. So they're up to on aggregate, but then Loving got the 3 points right back with the 3 of his own, 64-72. So it's
Loving made a really tough shot. He had a hand in his face, and he played well in this game, Loving, and they didn't guard him as well as they did in the first game. But that shot that he made, probably the toughest 3 of the night. I think Bell with his hand in his face. That was a major kind of we're not losing type of shot for me. And because we laughed about the Bell shot going in off the backboard. That wasn't a really good shot. It wasn't a shot that he shoots regularly. He does shoot threes, but he wasn't particularly open. He's actually not a bad 3-point shooter. He's not a guy that you would say, if he's open, he's going to bank it in. He's going to make them properly. It was a tough shot. There was a hand up, and Bristol's shot quality kind of deteriorated a little bit from there on, I thought, and they weren't able to kind of finish in either transition or off the offensive rebounding. But that shot from Loving was kind of okay. Yeah, okay, we're here now. Big boys time.
So then Whelan with the and 1, Leicester back in front.
I was surprised at this point because he had that and 1 on Mayhan, and I was surprised Mayhan was in the game at this point because King was on the bench and then probably getting a bit of rest for the end. But Mayhan's been a bit up and down. Allison's been really good, and obviously Miller has been making shots. But Mayhan's been a bit up and down, and he gave Whelan a straight line drive on his right hand, and he fouled him. And again, that's a play which really hurts you. You cannot give that up at that time. There are certain shots you can give up. You can't give that up. Once Whelan gets his shoulder pass on his right hand, he's scoring all season. He doesn't miss unless there's 7'2" of Sharma in front of him, maybe once or twice. But he's going, and to give him that lane at that point from the right hand, from the right wing, I thought was Mayhem was straight out the game afterwards. I thought I was about King in a bit before then. I think even though he wasn't shots.
That's 4:11 to go. I'll just give the aggregate score from here on out. 151, 149. 4 minutes to go. Delpesh hard to the basket. going for a big dunk. Jackson fouls him. That was Jackson's fourth foul. Still 4 minutes to go.
Great foul, wasn't it?
It was a great foul because Delpesh
Great foul.
goes 0 for 2,
Yeah.
and then come down the other end. Jackson hits a 3, and it's 154, 159.
Yeah, and it was a Jackson 3 and a Loving 3 because they're
Mm.
both shots then that you wouldn't regard as straightforward shots, but they're both shots they both make regularly.
Mm.
And the Jackson 3 in particular was, Jackson has this ability to shoot the ball from the pump fake position.
Mm.
So if you haven't got a hand up on him all the time, once he gets into his rhythm, once he gets the basketball up there, it's going in. If you're not, what you've got to do is get yourself into him so he can't get the ball to that point. You're almost going to make him dribble because he wants to step back and line you up and then shoot it. And he's a great shooter at that point. And they let him do that. And he made them pay because, those guys have been around for a few years and they knew what it was about.
2:48 to go. Miller with an offensive rebound, circles all the way back round, comes back in for a layup. 154, 151 at that stage. Then 1:55 to go. Jackson drives to the basket. Sneaky little goaltend by Bell. 156, 151.
I don't even know if that ball was going in.
That ball you think it might have fallen out?
That ball was on the back rim when he took it off, and when he went up through the net. And I'm not saying it wasn't going in. Well, I don't think it was 100% going in. And it's certainly not at the point that he put his hand through the net. And nothing good comes of putting your hand through the net.
No.
Automatic 2 points. It can't get worse.
Yeah.
Putting your hand through the net. So again, an inexperienced play, a mental mistake. I thought it was a mental mistake, even if it goes in or not. If it goes in anyway, he made it. But you can't just bail him out like that and give him that.
1:48 to go. McKenzie called for a foul against Miller. It would have been a turnover. He sort of lost the ball to.
Yeah, he had his hand on his waist.
Menzies.
You saw it on the sideline. I think the ref called it for the reach in, which it wasn't, but he did have his hand on his waist. So, yeah, it's one that you've got to live with, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But it was only the basket camera, the far end camera, which caught that. So I don't think the ref saw that. So I think he got a bit lucky.
So he makes 1 of 2, 156, 152. 1:35 to go. Menzies was in a bit of an awkward spot at the top, but Delpesh got a little excited and tried to steal the ball away, commits a foul. He goes 1 for 2 as well, so it's back to 5 for Leicester. 157, 152.
But just on that, so just so far from 4 minutes in, right? We've had Mahan with a bad foul. Okay, we've had Jackson shooting a rhythm 3. That's a bit Mahan on an and 1. We've had Delpesh missing 2 foul shots. We've had Bell going up through the rim. We've had Delpesh fouling Menzies probably at a time when he didn't need to. Now, how many of those quote marks errors or mental issues have we had from Leicester in that time?
Well, none, because the only thing. Well, I suppose you let Miller get an offensive rebound.
Yeah, but that happens. Bristol are going to get
offensive
rebound. That's not because you made a bad decision.
No, because he came from the wing and.
Yeah, that's because he's just made a play.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is that kind of giving up.
Yeah, because the McKenzie foul is. It's one of them where you don't know you're going to get called for that, and exactly, actually it was a turnover.
Yeah.
So
not a mistake. He had his hand on him, but I think it's very minimal contact. Yeah. So it's not something. But so I'm saying this is the difference. People think, it's a 3-point game. That's this team and that team. The difference isn't who puts the ball necessarily in the hoop. It's who gets the shots that they want and who makes the mistakes out of inexperience or out of pressure, whatever. And the only way you can get to that point is to go through the fire.
Yeah. So this it's a 5-point game. Then 1:18 to go. Menzies blocks a shot, but the rebound falls straight to Delpesh, who scores.
Yeah.
157.
Great job on the glass, Delpesh.
154. He did. Yeah, really good. And then Jackson at the other end, he probably should have took the 3, I thought, when he caught the ball, but he tried to back down instead, ends up missing late in the shot clock. Miller then tries to go quick at the other end, but ends up having to throw it high, and he misses a shot with 42 seconds
Yeah, I wasn't
to go.
upset with that shot. I thought he went a little bit too early because that was a 2-for-1 situation. And what was the score at that point? 3 points down?
3 points, yeah.
So 3 points down. So you need to get the shot off before 30. Yeah. And then Leicester get the ball, you get a stop, you can go down the other end, you can score and you win the game. So I wasn't upset that he attacked, but I thought he attacked too quick and he ended up with a really, really tough shot, which isn't his shot. You know, his shots, he's not all season, he's not been the guy who goes really quick. That's been King. You know, he's been the guy who goes at his speed and gets to his spot and rises up and shoots it and makes plays in the clutch. So going at 42 seconds, I thought that was too early.
Plus, in my mind's eye with him is he doesn't go all the way to the rim. He makes a mid-range shot. Yeah.
He's a spinner.
Yeah.
He's a spinner. He's a turner. You know, he's a manipulator of the defense. He rises up. So it was a little bit out of character. And it was a little bit too quick for me. Even though, you know, they want to extend the game, I get that. But you want to have a good look, a good shot. And that wasn't the best shot they could have got. So I'd probably check that down to another mental, not necessarily mistake, but not the smartest decision.
So Leicester run some clock. Then Mackenzie misses a 3. Dive on the ball, held ball for the rebound. Possession arrow flies way. Bring back the jump ball. That would have been way more exciting.
Way more exciting. We had fights and arguments, and it was the most.
I
think a jump ball was the most stressful thing imaginable for a coach.
Yeah.
You can't guard everybody. You can't have two, you won't have 2 players around every single one of the opponents. You can't because you need 8 on the court. Then you can't say tip it there, and you know it's just I hated jump balls, and I don't think refs like them either because it's just a free for all.
Yeah, I enjoy them. They're back in EuroLeague, Eurocup. I love it. Yeah, I love it.
Chaos theory.
Yeah. So then
Agent of Chaos, Rutledge.
Miller with the pick and roll with Delpesh. Gives it to Delpesh, who dunks it. Obviously, Leicester are concerned about the 3, not the 2. Because Loving could have come across and challenged that, but up 3, you leave him. You don't
challenge that. No.
So it's 157, 156. Leicester ball from the front court, and anybody who's watched as much Leicester as you and I have know exactly the play that's coming here.
Curl screen up.
Harrison
Gamble 2013. No, it's true, yeah.
So the ball was in. It was actually option 3, I think. Loving is on that play. And interestingly, Rob talked about it in the interview afterwards. He goes, "We don't really care who the ball gets to because we believe all our guys are going to make the free throws, or all of them."
Yeah, well, he's got. Well, who's he choosing?
He's got some pretty good free throw shooters.
You know, that's right. I mean, it's
now. Some debate from the officials about whether that was a grab around the waist and therefore an unsportsmanlike foul.
I don't know what your angle was. I didn't see it. I didn't see it on the telly, so
I thought that was way closer than who was it? Bell should have got in terms of the line of the unsportsmanlike. I don't want to see that called unsportsmanlike because I like the fact that you can foul to stop the game and make free throws and make the drama at the end. I don't want to see if that's called an unsportsmanlike. Leicester make 2, sideline ball, the game is over. I like the drama of it. But what I will say is I've seen that in EuroLeague, in Eurocup this season, called unsportsmanlike in that situation.
My only thought is that he was trying to shoot the gap in front of Loving for the steal. So kind of if Loving's catching the basketball, he's kind of got one hand there for the steal, and it's because one hand is out already that if the second hand into foul, that it looks like kind of the wrap up. So I have to say, but the camera angle wasn't great, so you had a better look at it than I did. So I was.
It's one of them where I was happy that it was a 2-shot foul. But he is close to the line, and it's a risk that you take in that situation.
Yeah, we had an argument over Luke Nelson at Newcastle, didn't we?
We did. You
know, so it's just no one really knows, do they? You know, if you're not 100% sure, you don't call it. So I'm fair. I thought this game was ref pretty well. You know, I didn't see anything in this game which they didn't lose control. there's nothing which made me kind of, oh, better YouTube rewind that one.
Yeah.
See what's going on there, you know. And obviously, you guys had the cameras all over the court as well, which helps. So no, yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, I think
So
we've done that to death.
Loving makes both free throws, 159, 156,
Yeah.
and come down the other way. Watson Gale falling away.
Yeah.
Jackson challenging well, airballs the shot, and that's the game.
But the things really, Bristol had burned the timeouts
Mm.
earlier, which means that is a situation where you do want to advance the ball. You don't want to be wasting 4 seconds getting the ball over half court when you've only got 7 or 8 seconds left, and not having that timeout hurt them. I think what hurt them.
Although I think if he'd kept it till then, he would have called it on the 18.4 second play rather than.
Yeah, he probably would have. Yeah, but then keep 2. You
Yeah.
know, I'm saying, you know, ultimately, you know, Leicester had one, didn't they?
Yeah, Leicester had two left, and they called one of them for the.
Bristol, I appreciate you trying to fight fatigue.
So,
with
so if Bristol had scored there, Leicester still had a timeout to advance the ball.
Yeah, so I appreciate, you know, it's tough because you in that gym, you're trying to fight fatigue with your players and you're trying to kill any run that Leicester have straight away. So again, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. You call them in the third quarter when Leicester are on a run. If you don't call, you might not get to the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
you know. So but ultimately it's a disadvantage if you're not in a position where you can kind of secure one. And there was certainly a game this week where someone called a timeout with like 2 seconds to go in a quarter to call a play or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember thinking I wouldn't have done that. You know, ultimately you get the ball in court, throw it up and save because the chances of succeeding are so small. But didn't have a timeout, so that's the first thing. Second thing, playoffs a little bit of a shock for Watson Gale. Certainly Leicester, a little bit of a shock for Watson Gale. He struggled in both games to get anything to go. They guarded him really well. They were up and into him, and he's a young guy, so it was his first time. So he wouldn't have been the guy probably had the ball. I think I got the ball to King, even though King hadn't made a shot.
So Watson Gale and King were a combined 1 for 16 for 3 points.
Yeah, that's the game. That's the game. And now you can't knock them because they've both done a tremendous year. And King, you know, is still coming back to health. I think that's fair. And probably the 2 games in 2 days probably didn't, or 3 days, probably about 48 hours basically didn't best suit him. But ultimately, you know, 1 of 60. Now I was a little bit surprised that Watson Gale got as much time at the point as he did. I thought he might have run him, put him in the corner, run him off some screens or whatever. And
he did have, I think it was 6 or 7 assists. I haven't written it down.
He did, but you know, ultimately he's a guy who he's a score first guard, and they took the scoring away. And you'll live with him making those hard plays because he's not a particularly big guy, so he struggles a little bit to see over the top at times. So, and he has a great deal of confidence about it, and I'm sure he's going to bounce back from it. But I know with that, those 2 games are not going to sit well with him the way that he's played all season. And I think it's you've got to go through the fire. Bottom line, you've got to go through the fire of these games. You just to be there. So that hurt them. As I say, I would have probably, you know, given Miller the ball a little bit more when he was in the game and tried to get
one of the things Rowe was saying on commentary is maybe they didn't get Ollison enough touches in the second half, given how well he shot the ball in the first half.
A little bit.
I think he only made 1 3, and that was
kind of the guy you can kind of. Ollison gets he's a secondary scorer. He gets his off-ball reversal. If people aren't out where a little bit like Loving actually, even though he's a different player, a different position. You know, he kind of gets his step into threes. He gets his transition threes. If you forget about him, he's killing you. I don't think Leicester forgot about him, but I don't think he was the number 1 guy on the scouting report. And you know, you know, to a certain degree, he's a little bit like Jackson and Loving. You got to make him put the ball on the ground. And I think they needed something from Watson Gale, unfortunately. You know, Watson Gale and King 1 of 16 is a killer. And I thought, you know, it was a bit of a baptism for Watson Gale. And then he ends up being the guy who shoots the last shot, but they got no sort of look really at it. And as I say, that was kind of, you know, if you're going to anybody to get a shot off on that team, it's King. Even if he's not made one, because he can take a dribble, take a step. He's got the step back in his armory, and he's not going to be troubled by the length that Watson Gale is. Watson Gale can shoot it, but if he has to jack one, he's shooting it over somebody.
Jackson,
and he
it
shoots
was.
it from
Yeah.
kind of here.
Yeah.
Whereas King has the ability to step back and shoot it. And I'd have lived or died on him. But sometimes they deny the inbounds and you can't get the ball to the guy that you want because you're going full court because you haven't got a timeout. You have to live with the best look you can get. Generally, the best look always comes from dribbling as hard as you can down the middle of the court and throwing it to somebody on the wing.
Mm.
And they never really got that. They kind of dribbled down the wing and kept going down the wing. You know, you generally nearly always have to make one pass. And they didn't. But hell of a game.
Hell of a game and a hell of a season for the Flyers. They set basically every record in the book for their club, in terms of wins and win percentages and home wins and home win percentage, away win percentage in the league, in all competitions. Incredible year for them. It ends in that wondrous thing that can only happen in aggregate basketball, where you win your last game of the season but you
And you
lose.
knocked out. Yeah.
And actually 13 offensive rebounds, 18 second chance points, 42% field goal shooting. They did all of the things that we've been saying that Bristol need to do to win, and they did win, and they didn't win by enough. And you know, that's sport, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, they won the last 62.5 minutes by 25.
So Loving with 18 points and 5 assists, Love with 12 points and 7 assists, Jackson 12 points and 7 rebounds, Delpesh 23 and 8. So he had 33 and 20 over the two legs. Ollison 4 of 7 for 3 for 19 points, and Miller 15 points. And we have one game left. And we've kind of already talked about it as well as we go through.
I know.
What would you say? 85-15%? 90-10?
London Leicester? No, 75-25.
Oh, I wouldn't go that high. You might be able to push me to 80-20, but
no, I know, no, Decker. 85-15 with 90-10 with Decker. 75-25 without. Don't knock it. Just firstly, Leicester are better than they have been, I think, at any point in the year, because they've got, for the first time, a point guard who fits. I'm not sure he's going to be great. He might have a good game, have a bad game. He might miss shots, he might make shots, but he fits what they do, or fits what they're trying to do. And if he is able to get any separation or get in the lane or get his little shiftiness going, that gives them another weapon. They're also got the whole Nelson Henry final game thing going on.
Yeah.
And I guarantee, and they also lost 5 times to them this year.
Yeah.
So they've stored up a lot. Now, the only thing I'll say is, certainly in seasons where we've ended up being on the wrong end of that, it's been very, very difficult once a team's got your number to knock them back, to get it back. You know, we had, it was Zaire's Leicester team. They beat us 5 times that year, including the fight. And we got to the final up there against them. And
we don't want that again. 69-57 or something.
57, yeah.
We don't want that.
Teams that knew, but 2 teams that knew the hell out of each
Yeah.
other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
Wembley as well. I was
up
in the gods trying to see that game.
Yeah, that wasn't it wasn't a fun game at all. I mean, we couldn't. No one could make a shot. And but the point being is that we actually played all right in that game for what we wanted to accomplish, but we just didn't have the horses. We didn't have the shot makers to get us over the line. And unfortunately, we kind of knew, because they'd already beaten us 4 or 5 times, that it becomes more difficult to kind of maintain that self-belief, which is, which you need, which is, we got this. So you're always trying to have to fill the players with that, hey, whereas these guys aren't great, we can take these guys. You're constantly trying to kind of beat back that narrative in the players' minds that you've been there before, that we've seen this team before, we've played them in this game, we've lost in all sorts of different ways to them. And I say Leicester have a slight advantage on that, in that Love he was there in a cup final, but he really wasn't. It was like his first game. And they haven't really played a meaningful game against London since, and the games that they have played have been quite close. And meaningful insofar as that anybody really thought that they had a chance of winning the league. I'm not saying they could have obviously been really. So they've been quite close, and they have shooters, who played in finals before, and that means that if Loving, is able to get off, if Whelan is able to get off, they have a shot. Now, London are a little bit in flux. I say they're in flux because they say, who are they going to start? Only interests me because I'm not entirely convinced he's going to either shoot you into a game or shoot you out of a game. I know he's going to shoot you. I know he's going to shoot. So Oni is a guy who, basically has to be on the court because of his defensive prowess, but he does shoot a lot of shots, which, possibly don't fit into London's shot spectrum. Kind of NBA shots, star shots, I call them, and he hasn't been overly efficient in shooting those shots. So there's a slight doubt with me in relation to him. If he steps up and knocks down threes, then there's no chance they're going to lose. But it could easily be, 3 or 5, or it could be 0-6. If they're 0-6, then that kind of changes things a little bit because coach is going to want him on the court. Taylor, I think, is the key. I think if Taylor dominates his matchup, if Taylor uses experience, sets his imprint on the game, and is ready for the game, then I think he'll be the one who could be the separator. Not necessarily in dominating the whole game, but just taking over the bits of the game that matter. And we can never forget Best and Nelson. I much prefer them with Nelson and Best coming off the bench together, because those two, when they come off the bench together, have absolutely dominated teams, dominated second units. They're a tough cover. And it's changed, and that's probably why he started Philip in the starting lineup. And when he came back, so he's got Philip and Taylor in the starting lineup. So the question is, is it going to be? I know I would. I mean, he's not going to take any notice of me, but I would be starting on what he's got. I would be starting Taylor, Philip, Oni at the 3 to guard Jackson, Zubcic to guard Loving, and Sharma. Problem is that only, and Sharma to guard Nelson Henry. The problem is that only allows them to go small. They can't get any bigger than that. That's about as big as they can get. And what we've seen in the past few weeks is that he's preferred to start small and then go big. So, but against Leicester, that's different because Leicester, Jackson is big. Jackson is 6'7", plays like he's 6'8" or 6'9". And I don't think you can get away with Best on Jackson to start the game. Maybe you can try. Maybe it's only 4 or 5 minutes. And you have to remember that the first 5 minutes of a final are exponentially more important than the first 5 minutes of any other game. Any other game, because that can spiral over very quickly. You can, and it probably won't happen with London because of the amount of big game experience and confidence in themselves that they have. But self-doubt is a killer in anybody. And I've not seen any of it in kind of London at the moment. But it can happen. It only needs to be 1 or 2 guys. Leicester will be ready. Rob doesn't lose many finals, certainly not in recent years. They'll be ready for the environment. They will have a plan. Have they got the shot making and the shot creation to carry it out if London are totally locked in? Tough to see that happening.
If London, if both teams play at their best, London win.
Yeah, I'm certain that's right, but that doesn't happen in finals. Generally, both teams play well below their best. Unless you're Lasker playing against Everton and giving up 102 and scoring 49. When you want to play to their best. Sorry, Drew. Now it does. So I'm not. I would still prefer last year's Leicester team over this year's Leicester team to take them on. But you have to say that over the course of the season, They've got three. They've got plenty of bigs. They've got three centres. You can get some minutes out of Menzies against Sharma, so he's not going to be physically overpowered there. You have Adekoya to come in to play some physical defence and to bump people around a little bit as well, and you might even get some minutes out of Walsh, which are a bonus, for him. So I say a bonus from where they were in December. Whereby where you wouldn't have expected that, and so you've got him on the court. But you come down to it, Nelson and Best coming off the bench are seriously good. Seriously hard to cover. Herban standing in the corner with Nelson and Best coming off the bench.
I
kind of hope that they miss. And Silawade to come under ball pressure, whoever it is bringing the ball up the court. They will need to get Leicester would need to get some offense out of their starting five, because if they don't, they're going to be worn down. When London's guards come off the bench, they're going to wear them down and they're going to struggle to get offense out of their bench. So, 78-22.
There you go. You're coming back my way.
I'm going back to you. But but they don't have the cheat code. They don't have Decker. They don't have the 7-foot NBA guy in Kufos. They got a point guard who's played 5 games. They've shown a little bit of temperamentality. That's such a word. They've shown that, and every team has, so it's not a bad thing. But look at that nonsense about against Newcastle, where the texts are flying out for both teams, and even a little bit in some of the other games, in Cheshire games, even yesterday. So I don't think they're uncrackable. I'll be amazed if in front of 15,000 people in London, with all the London paraphernalia and all the expectation, I would be extremely surprised if they didn't win, because it's kind of expected, and there will be, it's in their hometown, it's the rebirth of London basketball. They never won the playoffs before. It's a big thing. It's a big deal. It's 15,000 people. You can't. It's best. It's the most fun day I've ever had standing in the O2. And you just think that they've got so much big game experience, they're going to be there for it. But I'm glad it's Leicester, because I don't think Bristol would have handled it. I don't think not talent wise, but I think youthfulness wise, I think they would have struggled. I actually thought Bristol got served a little harsh. It was a little bit harsh on the Bristol guys for them to be announcing entering Europe 2 days before the semi-final, to be honest. I'm like, you're always looking for reasons after the fact as to why you didn't score a basket for like 10 minutes in the first quarter. But it's like, how much was any kind of focus taken off what were the 2 biggest games in the season by the fact that they announced that then? When they could have announced it this week after the semi-finals, or even if they got to the final after the final. Does that play a part in players' heads? I don't know, but I didn't like it. I would have left it. If I'd been the coach, I wouldn't have been overly keen on it, that being the conversation when you're going into the biggest 2 games of the season, or the only 2 games that are left. So I think they would have struggled in the final. In the environment, Leicester, I don't think will have that problem. Leicester will just have to look after the basketball, finish around the rim, make threes, and play close to the perfect game. They can do it.
Well, we will see if they do. You can watch it, of course, live on Sky Sports, it says, giving a plug. And Dave and I will be back at some point next week to break it down. I'm thinking we might, it's definitely not going to be Sunday night. We might be able to.
You'll be on the after show party, won't you?
Well, I will indeed.
Yeah,
and then, so Monday,
I'll be sitting in my little hermit shack here.
Yeah. Monday we'll see if we can squeeze it in between the inevitable march to the championship for my football team, because I think we have an 8 o'clock kickoff that night. So we'll see if we can squeeze it in somewhere in between that. But Whatever you do this week, enjoy it, and enjoy the playoff final as well. And we will be back next week for the final time. But for now, goodbye.